I've got a really cool guest with me today, Dave Thomson. I've known Dave for a long, long time. Dave, tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is David Thompson. I recently sold a business and made a few million. I've got a real rags to riches story in the fact that when I was 11 years old, I'd been in 9 different schools. I'm dyslexic, left school at 16 with 0 qualifications. Joined the Army, Her Majesty's Forces, the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Anglian Regiment with no qualifications. The Army taught me like order, structure, control and discipline. Before I went in the Army, I was well balanced. I had a chip on both shoulders and they sort of knocked one of them off, and I think I probably still carry a little bit of one. You know, life's been kind to me.
And when did you leave? When did you leave the Army?
I left the Army on the 30th of April 1990, my 21st birthday, after 4 years, 93 days.
And when did you start the business then?
So when I left the Army, I went to work in a shoe factory, Dr. Martin's shoe factory, where they make airwear boots, selling them around the world. And while I was there, I read a book by a guy called William Clement Stone.
And I've got to say, out of all the people I know, and I know a lot of people, I do not know anyone who has spent more money and time on personal development than Dave. I mean, Dave, how much you spent really?
It's a giant amount. I mean,
yeah.
When you get to know me, you know my story. I mean, I've relocated coaches from California to come and work for me, from eMyth Worldwide. You know, I've worked with Tony Robbins, I've worked with Bandler and Grindler, and obviously
And you don't just read the books either, do you?
No, I always go and have the big experience, work with people, get to know them as people, understand them, their life story, who they are. Because then you get that immersion experience, and then you know what's really going on rather than looking from afar. You get up close and personal.
Tell us a little bit more about the Cialdini stuff that you've done.
So I've just come back from working with a guy called Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini, who's the world's leading social psychologist. For those of you guys who don't know him, he wrote the book Influence, the book Influence. Everybody knows Warren Buffett, right? And Warren Buffett's a clever guy. He's the best investor in the world. His #1 book on marketing, his only book on marketing, is Robert Cialdini's book, and he wrote the foreword to Cialdini's book Influence.
And you're one of 7, is it?
I'm one of 7 people in the world that can teach his latest work, which is called Pre-suasion, which is genuinely interesting. That's like, who's ever seen Vin Diesel? You've seen Vin Diesel, right? When he's in the Fast and the Furious films, and when he sits in the car and he pushes the nitrous oxide button and the car straight off. That's what persuasion is to persuasion. So how would you like to have your people turn up wanting to buy from you before you've even made a request? He went out into the world studying all the different influence practitioners in all the different fields. So car salespeople, encyclopedia salespeople, marketeers, recruiters, even cult recruiters. And his one goal, his one mission was to work out what are the commonalities, what are the common themes, the shortcuts that we as human beings take to motivate people to move in our direction, to do 3 things: establish relationships, overcome uncertainty, and then actually take action. And what he found was there were just 6 influence principles, just 6 principles that we use. And they were common across cult recruiters to salespeople that human beings take as shortcuts.
So give us an example of one of those 6.
So the principle of reciprocity, how it exists in the world, it's about, as human beings, as a species, we feel obliged to give back to others the same form of service they've given to us, the obligation to repay our debts. We feel that. If somebody's done you a good turn, a genuine good turn, you want to pay them back. And if somebody's done you a bad turn, right, you want to pay them back. So we feel obliged to give back to others what they've given to us. And that flies in 2 ways, either in a way of gifts or concessions. Gifts or concessions. So people often think, well, I know what a gift is, I know what a concession is. Somebody's done me a good turn, I'll do them a good turn. But in reality, what happens is we'll understand that, but we become like, we can give somebody a gift. So I'll do you a good turn, but I'm just trying to get something out of it. So that can activate reciprocity. Somebody's done you a good turn.
And they say givers gain on some of those things.
Yeah, well, you think, well, hold on a minute. The only reason you're doing that is because you want something from me. If I pull up outside your office and one of your girls pulls up outside their office and it's raining and there's 1 parking space and I'm there first and I reverse my car out, I say, look, you can have that parking space. I'll drive 100 yards down the road. I'll let you have that space. And, then there's an obligation to think, oh, that's really good. David did this nice thing for me.
And sometimes that's just being nice, right?
It's just being nice. But there's ways that you can use that principle to establish relationships and make it so that you don't throw it away. So
how would I use it in an example in business?
So an example is when you say it's just being nice. If somebody, say, let's say I do the parking space thing, and one of the girls comes out and says, "That's amazing, Dave. Thank you so much." What you should never do, otherwise you'd be what Dr. Cialdini would be a bungler of influence. You shouldn't say, "Oh, it was nothing." It was nothing, because then what you'll be doing is you'll be throwing away a genuine gift, a genuine opportunity for them to repay you back. Yeah. And as a species, we want to repay our debts. So what a bungler of influence would do was they would say, "Oh, it was nothing. I've done it for anyone. It doesn't matter." What a sleuth of influence, which is what we teach how people are to be sleuths of influence, we would say, look, you'd say, "Look, I'm sure if the roles were reversed and you were in my shoes, you would do the same for me. If there's ever an opportunity for you to do a favor, you'd do the same for me." That's a way for you to be a sleuth of influence. Now, to activate reciprocity, the principle of reciprocity, there's 3 conditions that amplify the principle. It's not enough to just give somebody a gift or to make a concession. In order for that concession or that gift to work, it needs to be amplified. And the 3 conditions to amplify it that aren't in the book are that gift needs to be meaningful, it needs to be unexpected, and it needs to be customized.
That also can be like, what's your wow in your business? Sometimes it's like a thank you. If someone comes on and they buy a service from you, what are you doing? Do you have a welcome pack? Or do you say, "Thank you ever so much for that? That was brilliant." That's that sort of thing as well.
Thank you is a big thing. A lot of times people say thank you to us and we just bungle away the opportunity. We say it was nothing, it doesn't matter. So we need to teach people how to implement those principles to establish your expertise and trustworthiness, so that when we try and motivate somebody to move in our direction and they're not sure, they don't stall. They say, "Do you know what, I need to think about it. I need to go and speak to my brother." Dr. Cialdini did a thing with a medical practice, right, where he went into this medical practice that was local. It was in Arizona, it was in Phoenix, and people weren't listening to the physicians to follow their practices, to actually follow up after seeing the doctor. So these people had problems and they needed to go through a rehabilitation program. And so Dr. Cialdini, the local place that got that, they rang Dr. Cialdini and they said, "Bob, what can we do? We're struggling, can you help us?" So he went in there and he spoke to the patients and he looked and he said, "Why aren't you listening? Why aren't you following up? You need to do this. You've had a stroke. You need to do your rehabilitation." And what they said is, when we see the doctor and they turn up in their white coat and their stethoscope, they're an authority, they know what they're doing. But these people here, they just turned up in their tracksuits, they're trying to get us to do that. Why should we listen to them? So what Dr. Cialdini did was he said to the people, the physicians, I said, "Have you won any awards?" And they said, "Well, yeah, of course we have. Are you qualified?" So he made them put on the walls the awards they'd won, sign of their authority. And he said their expertise, the courses they'd rightfully passed. And what they found was compliance rates went up by 15%. So if you've got loads of reviews, you say, "Look, here's our reviews. Here's what the crowd thinks about us. Here's what everyone else is saying about us. We've got 9,000 reviews that have said we're amazing." And you say, and they're saying, "Well, I don't need to speak to my brother-in-law because those reviews have told me how good you are." Yeah. And often people have got reviews on their business or on themselves, but they don't show them.
So one of my favourite stories is 30 Feet from Gold. Now, you can look it up, but I'll tell you this story. So it was basically about a guy who owned a gold mine. And the gold mine probably made about $250,000 a year. And he was sort of happy with that, but after time, he'd had enough and he sold the gold mine. So he sold it maybe 300,000, something like that. So he sold it, and the guy who bought the gold mine from him did nothing with it for a year. And one day, the guy who sold it was in a coffee shop one day, and he looked in the newspaper and it said, "Largest vein of gold found ever." And he was like, "Oh my God." And he looked down, and the thing is, the reason, by the way, the guy who bought it from him, because he didn't do anything with it a year, when he saw that this was the largest vein of gold, he looked down further and he could see it was 30 feet from where he was digging.
So he brought in mining expert, didn't he?
And the person who bought the gold mine from him bought in a mining expert, and for a year they searched where the best place to dig for gold was. And as it happened, it was 30 feet from where the guy was bought. So it was then the biggest vein of gold. It made so much money. But that guy, I think he went into insurance or something after, because he said, "You know what, I was 30 feet from gold. I cannot believe it. I'm gonna sell, and he sold insurance and he became a multi-millionaire afterwards. But the moral of that story is, and what's also true for all business, there is no right or wrong, there's different. But if you get the right people or the right experts into your business, you can get to where you want to go quicker. And this is where Success Leaves Clues comes in, by teaching and coaching from business leaders to business leaders. And when I mean that, it's not someone who's just decided to be a coach. These are businesses that have actually grown and made money in your sectors that we're calling in to actually coach and mentor. So we've got a number of people that we've got. You'd have met Josh and Rochelle last week on Power Couple Hustle and what they were doing. Because you fall out of love with business, don't you?
Oh, mate, you fall out of love, but normally it's because you don't know you're 30 feet from gold. You don't know the answers. On influence, the last thing is, do you ever get a situation whereby you put a proposal to somebody, they think it's great, they love you, that they're taking your calls, they love you, they think it's a great idea, but then what happens is they do nothing. They say, why do we have to do it today? Why don't we leave it until Christmas? You know what this Brexit thing's doing? We should leave it to the new year. Do you ever get that situation?
Yeah, I mean, all the time.
All the time. So there's two influence principles that play here. The principle of consistency and commitment. And consistency and commitment, what do we call people that aren't consistent with commitments they've made to us?
Go on.
Loafers, lightweights, and often much worse than that.
And they certainly don't have.
And you let downs. Oh, he's useless. You'll never ever do it. You know what they're like. And so we have names for those people. And normally, what happens is they're socially cast out from society. So when we start, if we understand influence, what we can do is we can seek commitments early on. We can say, if I can, and then we can structure our requests in such a way that we gain commitments early on, so that when we want to close at the end, we can hold them consistent and commit to that commitment. Alternatively, what we can do is we can use the principle of scarcity, and we use this principle of scarcity ethically. Put my teeth
in. And you have an example of that.
Yeah, so an example of it. So I mean, let's say you've got two types of making a request. You can say, what's more powerful, a limited time or a limited number? What do you think is more powerful?
Well, I know it's a limited number now.
Yeah, no, it's a limited number, but often people will say it's a limited time. If you've only got 2 hours to do it, that's more powerful than saying it's a limited number. But if you've only got 10 places and somebody comes along and buys those 10 places, they're gone. And a limited number is twice as powerful as a limited time. So you say, look, there's one of me, there's one Ricky, and when he's gone when I'm busy, and loads of people want to work with me.
And that's what we're doing with the mentoring, aren't we, in the coaching? Because we've all said, and the experts that we're working with, they have a number that they want to do on a one-to-one. And obviously there's the other channels and the other subscription things that you can go onto, which is fine. But you have to qualify. You have to have a millionaire mindset. If you surround yourself with people better than you or more successful than you, you will naturally progress. But the millionaire, billionaire mindset isn't about just making money. It could also be, I need time. My thing before in my story, now you would have heard it. If you haven't heard it, I'll put it another time. But my thing was an architect of time, so it's more time with the family. I did the working all the hours under the desk. When we did Disneyland Connect and when we worked with these brands, we were sleeping under the desks because that's how the media industry expected things to be and get done. We changed that up, and then I spend time with the family because it's equal to have the work-life balance, isn't it? If you don't invest in your kids and your family, then they ain't going to invest in you later on in life. So it's for me, you've got to strike that mix. And I think the coaching and the mentoring and the people that we have that we introduce you to, they will help you get there because they've done it. And you don't have to do it. And if you don't want to do it, that's awesome. Don't come on, go and get one of the other coaches, go and get something. But what's the cost of getting someone who hasn't done it before you? And that's sort of what we look at Success Leaves Clues. So, I mean, we've got loads of stuff to talk about. We're going to do some other shows anyway, aren't we? So there's
my one piece of advice to anybody in business: if you want to be successful in business, the one thing you need to get right is not run out of money. And if you don't want to run out of money, the one thing you got to get right is your sales. You got to get your influence right. Because without that, you're going nowhere. You're toast. You don't have time to systemize your business. You certainly can't scale it if you've not got enough cash. So if you understand the language of business, the science of business, the first thing you've got to get right is you've got to get more money coming in than you're spending out. And the best way to do that is to scale your sales. And if you don't understand the DNA of what makes persuasion and influence work, then you will never be successful because you'll have been knighted into your position as a business leader and won't know how to repeat when your best salesperson leaves. You've got to understand that science. So getting that right is colossal. So buy influence, you know, buy Dr. Cialdini's book, Influence. It will make a difference. And yeah, and learn this stuff, because this genuinely moves the needle. As Ricky said, we'll do more with it. We'll talk about.
And we need to. I think
matters.
We'll do a sales one, if not another.
Yeah.
Because the sales, you had a big sales team. You grew all that,
Yes.
and if people are selling for you, and then you're doing that in the business, sales and marketing sort of fuse together. And one of the big things is experiential marketing and lifestyle marketing. We can go through all of that. But if you do that, it gives you time and freedom, and then you can sell the business. And at the moment, if you're doing everything and you're running every hat, then you ain't being successful. So we will touch back on sales, because sales is literally your forte, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love sales. I love influence. If you want to lead, you need to know how to influence your people. You need to know how to recruit your people. So persuasion and influence is my field. That's my specialist subject. And as I said, you know, I'm one of only 7 people that can teach Dr. Cialdini stuff.
And the sales stuff will come into your thing into that set. So thank you ever so much for coming and watching the first, well, actually it's not the first, it's the second live show that we had. Have an awesome week, and we hope to catch back with you soon. See you later.